Shawn Porter retains his WBC World Welterweight title with a 12-round split decision over Yordenis Ugas. Now, I've seen a lot of people screaming robbery, as is often the case with boxing. Fans are very reactionary and they very rarely keep a cool head. They're screaming robbery. Personally, I didn't score the fight. I've only watched it once. You can, I think it should still be up. You can watch it on Daily Motion. They've got some HD versions of the fight on there for those of you who haven't seen it or for those of you who want to watch it again. But watching it first time around, my overall impression after 12 rounds, let me just tell you this, is that Ugas definitely landed more eye-catching punches than Shawn Porter did. No question about it. The question is, did he land enough eye-catching punches to negate the fact that Shawn Porter in several rounds was outworking him? That's the question. Ugas had very confident body language. And don't underestimate how significant confident body language can be in terms of coloring the crowd and the audience at home's perception of who's getting the better of the action. A good example of that was the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury fight, because even on CompuBox, it showed that in many of the rounds, there was only 1 or 2 punches between them. But yet, people were saying that Tyson Fury won the fight hands down, and outside of the 2 rounds where there were knockdowns, you couldn't give Deontay Wilder any other round. Well, how can that be when in many of the rounds, there's only 1 or 2 punches difference between them? And judges score fights in real time. They can't go back and count every single punch. They're looking for clean, effective punches in real time. Well, how that can be is that Tyson Fury had the more confident body language, coupled with the fact that he was landing at a higher percentage. So even though he might have only been outlanding Wilder by 1 punch a round in many of the rounds, he wasn't wasting as many punches. And he had this confident body language, and he was doing all the showboating, particularly at the end of the round. And that, in people's minds, made them think, oh, he won that round easy. When you look at it in the cold light of day, you rewatch the fight calmly and coldly and actually look for who's landing, you'll see that a lot of Fury's shots were not landing or being blocked. And just as CompuBox recorded, there was very few punches between them in a lot of the rounds. But that's an example of how body language and looking confident and making your opponent miss can color the perception of people watching. And I do think there's an element of that here in this Shawn Porter-Ugas fight. Again, I haven't scored it because I did score the Wilder-Fury fight, okay? This fight here, I haven't scored. So I'm going to reserve my judgment in terms of who I think won. But there were definitely several rounds in this fight where Ugas wasn't doing much. And Shawn Porter was moving around and coming in with some sloppy shots here and there. Ugas wasn't really, countering that effectively in some of the rounds. So for those rounds right there, but Ugas constantly was doing this showboating, acting like Shawn Porter was running, come and fight me, doing all this kind of stuff. However, there were also rounds where Ugas was doing some very good work, where he was hitting Shawn Porter with very nice counters, eye-catching punches, time and time again. Basically, the rounds which Ugas won, he won big, at least from what I saw. The rounds that you could have given to Shawn Porter would have been marginal touch-and-go rounds. Do you understand? They wouldn't have been rounds where you think, wow, that's a Porter round. Apart from maybe very early in the fight. But as the fight progressed, the rounds that you might have given to Porter were touch and go. It's like, did you like the few extra punches of Porter or did you like the quality of Ugas? So that's the kind of fight it was. One thing I'll say about Ugas, though, is he appeared to be tremendously physically strong. For the entire 12 rounds, I can't remember one time, and I'm not saying it didn't happen, I'm just saying I can't remember it, because that's how infrequent it was if it did happen. But I can't remember one time in 12 rounds where Ugas's back touched the ropes. And yes, Shawn Porter was moving a lot in this fight, but there were numerous occasions where Porter did come forward and tried to push Ugas back, but he couldn't. And Shawn Porter is tremendously physically strong. He is one of the strongest welterweights I've ever seen. Tremendous physical strength, but he could not push Ugas back. It's like he just ran into a brick wall. Ugas, not only very tall, but very powerfully built. And he was just able to ragdoll Shawn Porter in there, which was an extraordinary thing to see. The only time I've seen anyone do anything remotely close to that with Shawn Porter before was when Porter fought Kell Brook many years ago. And of course, we know Kell Brook is a very, very big welterweight himself. But to me, Ugas looked even stronger than Kell Brook in there, in just shrugging off any of Shawn Porter's attacks very easily. Just very, very physically strong. It's the first time I've actually seen Ugas fight. I believe he fought Amir Imam, was it, a few years ago, and he lost that fight. I might have seen that at the time, but I don't recall. As far as I remember, this was the first time I've seen him fight, and I was very impressed by his physical strength. Just the size of him and, the way he was able to repel Shawn Porter's attacks when Porter occasionally came in and tried to push him back. His accuracy was good. His counterpunching was good. Not the fastest welterweight you've ever seen, Ugas. Not the most active welterweight you've ever seen, but again, he was dealing with an opponent who was moving a lot, so that probably cut his activity down significantly. And perhaps Ugas hadn't trained for this kind of fight, where Porter would be moving around. They have sparred together, apparently. And I have to imagine that Porter must have taken something from those sparring sessions. Perhaps he knew that Ugas was very physically strong and was a good counterpuncher. And he thought, you know what? He's not that quick on his feet, so let me use movement and beat him that way. Because up close, he's very, very strong. He's one of the few fighters who I can't overpower. So perhaps they came into the fight with a strategy of movement, because the commentators were criticizing Shawn Porter's movement, or some of the commentators were to a certain extent. And certainly Ray Mancini, who was working for PBC, one of the analysts, he was really critical of Shawn Porter. He said Shawn Porter did not win this fight, and he was just moving around on the outside doing nothing. I personally think that's a bit harsh. I do think Shawn Porter was doing something. It's just his punch quality wasn't as good as Ugas's punch quality. And again, his body language wasn't as positive and upbeat. At the end of the fight, Ugas put his arms up as if he knew he'd won, whereas Shawn Porter was kind of dejected looking. But that doesn't mean that the guy with his head down and the guy with his hands up, you've got the winner and the loser there, necessarily. Because if that's what it meant, then you could score fights that way, right? You could just say, okay, I don't need to see any of the 12 rounds. I'll just wait to the end of the fight and see who's got their head down and who's got their arms up. And I'll say, okay, that guy won. Ridiculous. Okay. You can't just look at that because, a fighter might be tired at the end of the 12 rounds. A fighter might think that he lost because understand the fighter, when you're in a fight, you're not scoring the fight. You're in the moment. So you're not so conscious of how the fight's going, if you're a round down, if you're you don't know. You're relying on your corner to tell you those kind of things. Do you understand? So, look, again, I didn't score Shawn Porter versus Ugas. Maybe I'll watch it again and score it. But I don't know. People are very reactionary to jump on the robbery bandwagon. When, in all honesty, there are not that many robberies in boxing. There aren't. Yeah, there are some robberies. Yes, occasionally we do get robberies. Every couple months we'll get a genuine robbery. But was this a robbery? I'd have to watch it again and score it. But my overall perception was it wasn't a robbery. It was a competitive and close fight. I believe Marcus Villegas, who was the unofficial judge for PBC, I think, did he have Ugas winning the fight by a round or two? He might have done. But he had it close. My perception of it was this is a fight you could have definitely scored close. Because of the dynamic I explained earlier, the fact that Shawn Porter in some rounds was just busier. Even though his work wasn't particularly good quality, he was the busier man. And in them situations there, you use your discretion. Do you prefer the guy who's throwing less but higher quality, or the guy who's throwing a lot more but poorer quality? You see, if both guys if both guys land 8 punches, or let's say one guy lands 8 punches in a round, the other guy lands 9 punches. But the guy who lands the 8 punches, they're way better quality than the guy who lands 9. In that situation right there, it's easy to score. But when you're talking about a big gap in terms of punches landed, so one guy lands 10 punches, but they're not very good quality, and the other guy lands 7 punches, which are good quality, in a situation like that, you're in a gray area. Do you understand what I'm saying? There gets a point where punch quality can be superseded by punch volume. Did Shawn Porter reach that point in some of the rounds against Ugas? I think an argument can be made that he did. Yeah? So, I don't know. It was an interesting fight. It wasn't the thriller in Manila or anything, but it was an interesting fight. Ugas obviously dejected that he didn't get the result. One of the judges obviously scored it for him because it was a split decision. In fact, one of the judges scored it for Ugas by a pretty wide margin, 117-111. And the 2 judges who had it for Shawn Porter had it 116-112 and 115-113. So relatively close for Porter. Did Porter get the benefit of the doubt? See, if you want to talk about Porter getting the benefit of the doubt from the judges, I can entertain that. But is that what you call a robbery? A robbery to me is a fight where only one person could have possibly got the decision. The rounds was so clear that there is no way in hell you could have given the fight to the other guy, because he was outlanding the guy by a large margin in the vast majority of the rounds, beating him up and doing it clearly. In a situation like that, if he don't get the decision, that's a robbery. Like, for example, Derek Chisora when he fought Robert Helenius. A very clear robbery. Unambiguous. I mean, if Sergey Kovalev had lost the decision to Alvarez in the rematch, that would have been a robbery. And believe you me, people, there have been fights similar to that where the person in Kovalev's position administering the schooling has lost the decision. As incredible as that is, that has happened in boxing. So I'm not someone who's so quick to cry robbery in general. That's just not what I do. I like to think with a calm head and, not be so reactionary as most boxing fans. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about the fight. There were definitely rounds open to interpretation, but Ugas has definitely come out of this with a bolstered reputation. And Shawn Porter's reputation has definitely taken a little bit of a hit because of the fact that Ugas was relatively unheralded. I mean, we look at Ugas, he'd lost 3 times before fighting Shawn Porter. Only 11 KOs on his record. Let's have a look at some of the people he's fought here. Of course, yeah, it was Amir Imam, who he lost to. He lost an 8-rounder to Amir Imam. That was actually his second defeat. Lost to Emmanuel Robles. Lost an early one to Johnny Garcia. So he'd lost a few going in here. He was unheralded. He was expected to be food for Shawn Porter by a lot of people, right? So when you struggle with someone who you're supposed to, according to the form book, according to on paper, you're supposed to just run through this guy. When you struggle with him, people are going to be very harsh on you. And I think that's what people are being with Shawn Porter right now. They're giving him the business. Saying he didn't win the fight. I saw Mayweather Sr. at ringside saying, "Oh, that was terrible." And I think he booed Shawn Porter when Porter walked past as he was leaving the ring. Mayweather Sr. So, yeah, I'm sure some of you guys also feel like it was a robbery, but go watch the fight again in the cold light of day, and you can make a case, I personally think, for Shawn Porter edging some of the rounds, just on work rate. I'm sure you can do that. It's not like Ugas is outlanding him by 5, 6, 7 punches a round, is he? No. I'm going to say that to me, it looked as though Ugas was landing less punches than Shawn Porter in many of the rounds. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Maybe you guys think that Shawn Porter should run it back with Ugas. I can't imagine Porter's going to be keen on doing that anytime soon. I'm going to guess that Shawn Porter is going to target the winner of Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia. In fact, I think he said something like that in the post-fight interviews. So yeah, let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.